All right, it's been about 4 days, and I've let this dry for that time. I'm just going to take my sanding stick. It's labeled as a 240 grit, but it's so old, it's probably not that much of a grit. I am wet sanding, and I'm not going back and forth, but I'm doing kind of a circular motion. Occasionally, I'll dip it in my water, kind of clean it up a bit, and get back to it. When I'm sanding, I don't rush, because rushing, you'll end up with potentially far more sanding going on than you intend. You dig down into the plastic or leave marks that are hard to deal with or something like that. I just stop every now and then and feel it. And I want to drag my fingernail. Dragging your fingernail along it is a really good way to see if there's any kind of gaps, because your fingernail will, if there's a gap, your fingernail will pop into it, click into it. You'll feel it. You might be able to feel it with your fingertip, but you'll almost guarantee be able to feel it with your fingernail. All right. Feels fairly smooth to me, so now I'm going to switch grits. Now this is listed as 400 grit, but like the 240, it's probably less than that, because I mean, these are old sanding sticks. I use the heck out of my sanding sticks. I don't get too pedantic about, you know, what I look for is, are they working? If I can sand stuff and get it smooth, that's more what I'm worried about. I don't worry about, get some of that paint off of there. I don't worry about if it's perfect. If you've watched my stuff long enough, you know that. I've joked about, not joked, I mean, I've talked about with painting, that if something gets to the TLAR standard, that looks about right. That's the way it is for just about everything I do. Sometimes people will ask me for specific thinning ratios or, specificity on product. And, sometimes black primer is just black primer. Sometimes, thinning paint is just thin it until it works the way you want it to. It's not to say that there aren't things that, like if you're going to be making a lot of something, you want to write down a mix of paint. Well, it's not a bad idea to write down the ratios that you used. But for the most part, I just eyeball stuff. I don't get too worked up about it. All right, there's a little bit of a gap right there. So let me think how I want to deal with that, because I can feel it. It's right there at the edge. That's one of the hardest places. Right at the edge of any gap, you have a pretty good chance of, what happens is you'll get the filler down in there, but when you're sanding it, because it's open on one end, it's more likely to come apart. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a slightly more aggressive sanding stick. Let's see. Where's the one that I had earlier? I was looking at, yeah, I'm going to drop down to 180, and this one hadn't been used a lot, so this one's got some heft to it. What I'm going to do down there on that lower edge, I'm going to dig into that a little bit. It may round it off a bit, but if it's not too deep, I can get it back to where there's a join, because what I'm looking for is not a state of perfection. This is 400 grit. I'm not looking for a state of perfection. I'm looking for a point that I can go, yeah, I can live with that. Now once I prime it, if I see that it's a little too obvious, I may take more steps to do something with it, but this is why I don't like construction. Sometimes yeah, it's just going to be there. It's actually spreading a little bit. Well, let me think about this. See, the issue is going to come in when I prime it and paint it. Right now you can't really see it, but I can feel it with my thumb, and I know from experience that what that's going to do is it's going to create just a little line, a very visible line right there, and I don't know if I want that. So there's several ways I could treat it. I could put more Mr. Surfacer or more putty on it, but because of where it's at, probably wouldn't work. I could put Mr. Surfacer on it, but it would probably run into the same thing. Now another option is just to ignore it, and let's see if it goes away. Let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Hang on. See if I take this black marker here. This is a good way to see where your imperfections are. See it? It's right there. Right on the end like that. Now, some of you may be saying, but the black marker will come up through the paint. Yes, it will. Unless you take it off. And by that I mean the paint. Keep your clothes on. Alright, I've continued sanding with the various grades. And I've got it to the point that I'm willing to accept it. Maybe a little bit of a notch there, but I'll live with it. What happens is, let's say you've got, well, hold on, let me draw this. I'll just use this envelope. So you've got two pieces that are joined, and say we're looking at them like here's a piece. We're looking at it like from the side, not from the top. And you join a piece to it, and you glue it, right? Right there, you glue it, smooth join, everything's good. But sometimes where there's an edge, you'll get a little bit of a pit. Like that. Just like I did here. And this is like looking at this, again, like I'm looking at it from front on. Not from top down, but from front on. So you get a little bit of a pit. Well, you put in the filler and it fills most of it. But like I said, now here, this is top down. The ends here and here, whoops. That's where you tend to get some of the filler coming out or something like that. So what you can do is, if it's not too severe, you can actually sand it down below this level. And this is exaggerated because you're really just talking about thousandths of an inch, most hundredths of an inch. And if you just sand it down to where the plastic is fully joined, then you've gotten rid of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If that wouldn't have worked on this, probably what I would have done is put a touch of super glue right there on the end and sanded that down. Like I think I'd said in the previous video, you can use super glue. I don't, because sometimes it forms bubbles and has its own issues. Every filler is going to have its own issues. Sprue goo, Tamiya putty, Mr. Surfacer, any of that, all of it has its issues. So you just have to pick your poison in a sense. But I can live with this. And yes, I'm saying that hesitantly, but I can live with this for now. Now right here, I'm just going to take this chisel tool, this scribing tool. You're supposed to, I mean, it can work as a scribing tool this way, or it can work as a chisel this way. And I'm just going to chisel back the plastic until I get it smooth enough. Again, I'm not worried about perfection. I'm just scraping away layers of plastic basically until I don't hear much of a click as it goes across it. That little line is going to be there even if after primed it's not visible, because that's where the joint is. And you have to be careful with this. You got to keep it even. In other words, it's got to stay flat along the surface. If you start leaning it up or down, you're going to start introducing additional gouges. And you'll notice I'm pulling it in one direction. If I push, it's going to pick up a lot more plastic, give me less control. Now, I could flip the model around and do it from the other direction, but I'm not that worried about it. Now I just clean that up with a toothbrush, and then there's a little bit of the artifacts right up here. So I'll just use the edge to just kind of clean that up. And by the edge, I mean the edge of this, not the guitarist for YouTube. So, there. I'll live with this. All right, and I'm going to paint this frame edge here with Vallejo German gray. Now, if you're horrified that I did not prime this first, I'm not really worried about it. Canopy is going to be connected to it. So this paint, despite what is often portrayed among creators, this paint will stick. And because it's going to be enclosed behind the canopy and it's not going to be touched and not going to have any stress on it, not going to have anything else going over it, it's going to be just fine. Now, I'm trying not to get it over onto the tan on the interior walls, but if I do, I'm not going to worry too much about it, because the canopy is going to be right there, and that framing is going to cover up most of that. So any slip-ups hopefully will be small and will not cause any problems. That's my hope. Now I'm doing a quick test fit of the canopy and the roof just to see where things are going to end up. So it looks like some of that roof line is going to extend down under the canopy, and then this is going to cover up a good bit of it, but it wouldn't hurt to just paint this black anyway, just so when somebody purchases it, assuming they do, there won't be bare plastic shining. So let me do that. Now while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to paint this framing, just the top edge of it, with that black so that it'll appear to be all one sort there, as they say. Now because this is clear plastic, it may take a couple of coats, because plain acrylic paint may not stick real well to it, although Vallejo does a good job. And I've only thinned it very little bit, just enough to get it to flow off the brush. So this is actually fairly sticky paint. So I just put that on, and then when I prime over it, this black will be underneath. It should hold okay. If it's not, I'm not worried about it. It's just a plastic toy. Alright, now it's looking like that's dry enough. So I'm going to put this on here like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Tamiya extra thin. And I'm not going to have a whole lot on the end of the brush. I'm just going to flow it right at the edge. You don't want to flood it, because if it floods up underneath, it's going to get up on the clear part that's visible, and you don't want that. So this is and I don't even consider this living dangerously, really. I've done this so often that I feel fairly confident. Doesn't mean I can't make a mistake, but I feel fairly confident of the outcome. So this will hold much better than white glue or any of the glues that are designed for canopies. Now I'm not going to put any along here, because that is clear plastic right to just the flat plastic surface. So I'm just going to, I'm focusing it down along here. That's where I want it to be really strong. I mean, I've got enough up top that it's going to hold, but this down here is going to be the easiest to conceal, the easiest to work with. And you'll notice I didn't scrape off any paint. This glue will dissolve paint. And so I've found I can let it dissolve the glue that it wants to, and it will make a mixture that will work. See, it's already on there solid enough that it should be good to go. I may do it one more coat this evening, but that'll hold in place. As I've been working along, I think the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off the interior, and then I'm going to get some black paint. It'll be Tamiya paint probably, because I'm going to airbrush it on. Some black paint and thin with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, and I'll paint this, the entire engine, interior area of the engine there, and this right here, and this up here. And what I'll probably do is just mask right along that line. Whoops, sorry. Here. Mask right along that line right there, so that this is the same color as all this back here. And this will be painted, and down here will be painted, just so when somebody lifts it off, there's not just like I said, bare plastic showing. I'll probably go through with a paintbrush and touch up along here, that kind of thing. And one other thing I wanted to do is, when I do put the roof on, it tends to get, I guess you got to put it on the right way, John. No, that was right. Where's the holes? There they are. The little parts up here, and I'm not going to push it on the whole way so that I don't wedge too much against that canopy, but the little pieces right here that hold it in, they do a really good job of gripping, so it makes it difficult to lift this off. Now, if it's not that, because I'm not going to glue it on, it's not that it needs to be, it fits tight enough that someone will be able to set it on and use this, and you'll be able to turn it upside down. That's not going anywhere. It's not like it's going to be real loose. But what I'm going to do is, just to make it easier for somebody to take this on and off, I'm going to trim down. I'm going to start by trimming down the edges of, am I on camera? Yeah. Trimming down the edges here of this. And I'll paint it to neaten it up. But just to trim that down, I think that one, is the one that's providing the majority of the grip. There we go. Yeah, you hear it's pretty tight fit. So now let me pull it off, because if you pull it off from the rear, it's still gripping quite a bit. So let me bring this one down even further. In fact, I may just go ahead and eliminate this one, because I want to get it to the barest fit needed to work, basically. I'm not interested in it being super tight, because for the purposes that I'm doing, that's not really necessary. So I don't want to gouge it out too much. Let me just get down in there like that. Finish it off with this. All right, try it again. Okay, now let's see. Was that? I think that was it. If I pull it up from the back here, yeah, that comes up much easier, much easier. Okay, so I have to sand that just a little bit, just to neaten up the appearance. And you know what? Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. That holds good enough. So that's taken care of. Now I just need to let this glue set. And I'm going to be heading off to work soon, so I'll just let that happen, and then I'll do this, paint this, get all this painted black, then I'll mask everything up. And my idea is that when I'm ready to prime, that I'll mask those doors from the inside, mask off the bottoms of the doors, those parts right there, and then put this on, which will effectively mask the interior. And then that will mean everything will be ready to prime and get ready for painting. All right, it's primed. I did it exactly like I described. I primed these areas back here roughly in black. I'll go back and hand paint them just to get the areas black that I want to be black, and then other areas will be gray. The rest of it is just gray all over, and then on the inside I painted, like I said, the edges around there black. So this is ready for painting. Now for primer, I used something that I did on aircraft models, and that's just, to me, a paint with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. So technically it's not primer. I mean, it's not purpose-made primer, but it works as a primer because it adheres so well. I used NATO Black XF69 for the black areas, and then this is XF19. I think it's Sky Gray, I think is what it's called. Because I'll be painting this, it's going to be white-ish. It's not going to be pure white. Going to be a very light gray, and I'm planning on somewhere along here incorporating a red stripe. Not sure where, but just to kind of break it up. And then I'm going to weather the heck out of it. Oh, and by the way, that gap up at the front, you can still see it. I'm leaving it. Maybe I'll put some chipping there to hide it. I'm not worried about it. So anyway, I thought about showing masking it off and all that, but I masked it off with tape. I don't, it's the best I can say. Got a bunch of masking tape in there just to mainly protect it from the primer, because I'm going to be brush painting this. I don't need to worry. I won't worry too much about getting paint on those areas. I mainly did it, like I said, for the airbrush, but it's an interesting looking model. It's Star Wars-ish, yet not. If it didn't have these elements here, if it was a little smoother, you could almost look at it and go, that's Star Trek. It's got kind of a Star Trek shuttle look too, so it's just an interesting look. What I like about it is all of the really nice panel lining and all of the little greeblies and details. They're going to be fun to paint, so that's going to be really cool. My thinking right now is that it's going to be a single episode of painting and weathering, but if I stretch the painting part out for quite a while, I may do it the second video for weathering. I'm not entirely sure yet, so we'll see. We'll see. I've got an idea of the flow that I want to do with the painting, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure. If it were up to me, I would just make videos that are like 4 or 5 hours long of just doing the whole thing. But I know even a 20-minute video for most folks is a stretch. Watching it, and mine, which are close to an hour, tends to chase people off. But oh well, it is what it is. And my plan is, during the YouTube video, I'm not even going to talk about that the roof is removable, and just kind of at the end when I do, because I still got to do the base for it and everything like that, but kind of at the end when it gets to the reveal, to just have the model finished and then pop the roof off and have the figures already in there and go, oh yeah, by the way, look at this. Not make too big of a deal of it, but of course, all that could change, so we'll see. All right, well, that'll wrap this up, and I will call it a video. Thank you so much for being a patron and supporting my family and I. We are grateful, and as always, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.